while the others go. So we were talking about these utopian experiments, right, that emerged at this time. So I want you, Bobby, to get the kind of flow of this. Let's do it again real quickly. You know, you have all of these changes that result in these problems, but you have an optimistic population of people that see some of these changes resulting in things that are going to be good, but being fearful to some extent and anxious about other things. And this sets the stage for reform, right, to fix things. But it's not going to be enough. This anxiety and optimism isn't enough. There has to be some kind of foundation for this reform. And we said the romantic vision that people had for life and for America at this time is one of the impulses that reform is built on, as is this revivalism, right? The Second Great Awakening that emerges in this time, this turbulent religious revival that spreads all across the country. And, you know, I mean, Cane Ridge, Kentucky in 1801, allegedly 25,000 people came to a revival in a town with only 20,000 people, Lexington. You know, so you know, lots and lots of people are listening to these revivalist ministers in outdoor meetings, and they're inspired by them, Finney being the most prominent of them. And remember, the Second Great Awakening is kind of Jacksonian in a way. You can choose. And when you do choose, you'll become different. And you'll have obligations, and your obligations will be to do something to make things better. And Sabu, our dear friend Sabu, has a thought about that.
What year is this happening?
Well, I mean, this is the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s.
Oh.
Yeah, through the antebellum period, yeah. And so then we're talking about this utopianism, right? Where, you know, these people are saying, well, okay, we're going to fix things by showing you the way it can be. And so communes, you know, utopian places where people, many of them were really bizarre, you know, but the most famous, the only one that you really need to know, is Brook Farm, right? Brook Farm was a utopian community in Massachusetts. Do you know why you need to know it? Anybody know? Anybody know what Brook Farm is famous for? Its most famous resident. Nobody? Anybody read the Scarlet Letter? You all read it. Well, the Spartans, right?
In the process.
In the process of reading. Who's the author?
Daniel Hawthorne.
Hawthorne was a resident of Brook Farm. Right? And he writes about being at Brook Farm. And so when we talk about the utopian experiments of that time, Brook Farm is usually brought up. But what we really wanted to talk about was the actual reforms. And so we built this kind of whole discussion to get to these reforms. And we said we're only really going to talk about three. Temperance, the treatment of the mentally ill, and abolition. Those are the three reforms. Now, we're going to say that Cebu during this time, the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, sometimes called the Age of Reform. And there are lots of reforms. Public education, you know, prison reform, women's rights, equality for women. Lots of things that lots of different people championed. Lots of causes that were championed by people who were inspired by the Second Great Awakening, or had a romantic impulse, or for one reason or another thought that they could make the world better. I mean, so distinctive that we look back at it and we say, look, this is distinctive. Look at all these things. But the three we're going to focus on are temperance, treatment of the mentally ill, and abolition. Now, the reason we choose temperance is this. Temperance is the most far-reaching reform of the time period. More people were involved in the temperance movement than any other movement. Now, what do we mean by temperance? Temperance referred to and attempted to address the excessive consumption of alcohol. Now, here's what's interesting. The temperance movement, and really what temperance advocates wanted people to do, is drink less or drink nothing. Drink less alcohol or drink no alcohol, depending upon your version of temperance. It was a response to a very real problem. In the 1820s, Americans drank more hard liquor than ever before or ever since. And you can look at different sources. The one source that I have suggested that the per capita consumption of hard liquor was 7 gallons a year per person. I see some that say 5 gallons a year per person. Now that's for every man, woman, and child in the country. They're consuming 7 gallons.